Hello everyone, my name is Design Team Alf Nasreen, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make the hanging ornaments using stamps that you can get from downlandscrafts.ie. And just as a disclaimer, this is a craft that looks a bit rustic, it looks handmade, it's not supposed to be perfect. If you want perfect, you can buy in the shop, but this is something that's you can do it with the kids or with the family over the holidays, and it's something that you can do as a tradition and you can hang on the tree and it looks personalized. So I'm using some air dry clay, and I'm going to be using stamps that you can get from downlandscrafts.ie, and I'm going to show you how well this stamp works with this craft. So I'm just using, you can use any kind of air dry clay, something that's going to dry stiff and that's malleable, and this clay is really inexpensive and something you can find at craft shops and easy for kids to play with. So just make sure your hands are nice and moist and that you play with the clay. Now I'm using this tiny little rolling pin that's made for kids, but I don't want to get my actual rolling pin dirty. So it's basically like making cookies. So if you have a cookie cutter, which I don't, and you can see in this video I'll be using the lid of my paint jars, but you can use anything, even just a plastic knife to cut a shape out. Basically you want something that's going to fit within your stamp and it's going to look good hanging on the tree. This is also a good stash buster. If you have a lot of items in your stash that you haven't used for quite a while, and maybe you want to get rid of some things for the new year so you can get more stuff, this is a good way to use up things that you have already. Beads, baubles, stickers, any kind of thing that you want to use up from your stash or that you don't mind the kids using. So I just use the lid there and I'm smoothing around the edges, and you can smooth it down with a bit of water. Make sure your surface is protected. You can use some old newspaper or plastic bin bags or anything just to make sure. I'm using a piece of cardboard that I've covered with plastic contact paper. Now I'm going to be doing this stamp in two ways. The first one, I'm going to be using Memento Tuxedo black ink, which you can get from Downlands Crafts, and the other one is just going to be plain. Why did I do this? Just so I can show you that there are different ways to do it. In the one image you're going to see the black really stand out, in the other one you can play around with it a bit more, but I just want to show you the different ways that you can use different products. And this isn't going to mess up or damage your stamps at all, because the Downland Crafts stamps are such good quality that you just rinse it under tap and you're good to go. You can use it again on your cards. I wouldn't recommend double stamping. If you're going to stamp, just make sure you get the right image the first time, because you don't want to muddy up your ink pad. And there you can see I've just stamped the sentiment in the middle of my ornament. And there's the words that come after, because it's a two-set stamp. And that's how it looks with the black ink. Now I'm going to be using the lid of a pen, but you can use a straw or a needle or anything just to make a little hole in the center to put some ribbon through so you can hang it on the tree. Just removing it there, putting it back in with my clay. If you make a mistake and you do stamp wrong, you can always start over again, but I recommend getting it right the first time. So here's the two different stamps together, and you can decide which one you like better. I'm going to show you how to decorate it using acrylic paint, and that's one thing I always have in my stash. I always have some paint because you can use it for so many different crafts, and this is just a cheap set I got from the store. So I'm going to be painting them in two different ways. I'm using a fluffy brush and a jar of water with a lid on top so it doesn't fall over. It's just an old coffee jar. And using a paintbrush, I'm just going to dry brush over this. I'm not going to use a lot of paint, and I'm just going to brush over it very carefully because I don't want to mess up my sentiment. But this one, I think the blue one, yes, actually I used a darker color, and I went in between to make sure to get all the nooks and crannies of this, because the stamp is very deep, so you want to make sure to get right in there and not leave any white, unless with the snow part, that's alright. So what I'm going to do is, using a darker blue, I'm going in between the wording of the stamp. Then I'm going to mix a little bit of white with it and dry brush over the top, and this is just going to leave a layer on top and let the words stand out a lot more. There are so many different ways you can do this. You can even make it look like a cookie. You can use any paint you like, but this is what works well for me, and I thought it looked cute. Just making sure I get in all the little bits so that I cover everything with the paint. Now I'm just mixing a little bit of white with it and getting a kind of a soft baby blue, and this will look nice if you have a green tree or a white tree. It will stand out a lot. And this is really easy, and it's a great family craft to do with the kids. Keep them busy for a little while. I use a pack of baby wipes next to me to make sure I wipe off my hands and the surface after every time. And this is me just dry brushing the paint. Make sure to get the back of the ornament as well as the sides. You can also write the name of the child on the back and the date, or yourself on the date if you want to give this as a gift to somebody. But each year if you do this, then it's nice to hang it on the tree and look at the date on it, and it's a nice heirloom or a tradition for the family each year. And it's inexpensive as well. It's not a very expensive craft, and it looks good when it's done. And this is something that you cannot buy in the shops because it's personalized and it's handmade, and it's the one of a kind when you make it, and it works so well with stamps. There's the first one. And the second one I'm going to be doing is going to be a green color. Just making sure I wipe off all my paintbrushes. And if you do get in the bits of the stamp, you can always just go over it again with the paintbrush. That's a great thing about acrylic paint. It's so forgiving. You can just layer upon layer. And if you don't like it, you just paint over it again. Just using a baby wipe too. I always make sure whenever I craft to have some baby wipes on hand, just to clean up my surface. Now for the second one, I'm going to go for something a bit different. Now this is a process, so if you're doing it and you don't like the way it looks, just keep going at it. I did make a few mistakes, but they're very easy to fix, and you'll see at the end they might look a bit rustic now, but when you start adding the embellishments, it'll really look good. Now I did a very faint green, and I put a lot of water with it because I didn't want to mess up the black of the stamp. And as you can see, I'm just using a darker green all over it, and with the big fluffy brush again, trying not to get into the wording too much. But you can see for yourself which one you like and which way if you use the ink or not use the ink, or maybe a different colored ink. I'm just using different greens to get some different textures in there. I do play around with this one a lot, and I think it was a bit of a fail. Although it was nice to play with, I had a lot of fun, and luckily because you add so much embellishments and it's paint, you can always go over it again. I must say I prefer the blue, but the green was something different as well. And at the end, when I did add the ribbons and the little extras, I think it came together much nicely. So it is a process, and you can always add more and take away. It's a very forgiving craft to do. There really are no rules when it comes to decorating your crafts. Now I decided to mimic the black of the stamp and to go around the edge. Later on I actually didn't like it that much and I covered it up, but I wanted to see how the black would look next to the black of the stamped image. And it's a different look, it's something else, and you might like it, you might not. But I mean, if you don't like it, you can always go back over it. As you can see later on, I did cover it up with some white and made it look more like snow, but it was nice to try and see how it would look with the black. Now I'm going to show you how to add some sparkle, and I used some clear glitter, and this is microfine glitter inside an old spice container, and it's nice this way because in case the kids kind of lean for something and spills the glitter over, you're going to have glitter everywhere. So when it's in a spice container, it's very easy to manage because there's a sprinkly side and there's also a bigger side. And I'm using some clear glue. I'm using Mod Podge. You can use white glue if you like, any type of glue. And these are two different methods. This is just going around the edge, putting the glue, and then just putting a little sparkle on. And then it's going to look a bit like snow. And because it's clear glitter, the black will show up through when the glue is dry. So this is two methods. This is when I put the paint on and sprinkle the glitter. The second method you will see works a lot better for me, and it's easy to clean up, and make sure you have something at the bottom to catch the spills from the glitter. It's great having it inside the spice container because it's a great way to recycle. It's glass, so it's good for recycling. And yeah, it's great to sprinkle the glitter instead of just dumping the whole thing out into a container and having to deal with it that way. You can even do some embossing if you have an embossing heat gun or a heat tool, just to add a little bit of sparkle and shine. I think it adds an extra layer to your craft. Now this is the second method where I actually make my own kind of glitter glue, where I use the Mod Podge and I mix it in with the glitter, and then I just brush it over like a varnish, and this gives a little bit of sparkle. I probably used a little bit too much, but it does dry clear, so don't worry about that, and it does seal in your work. So I would say when it comes to making these crafts, it is good to seal the stuff in, that way it might last longer. And adding a little bit of sparkle is always great. You can also use glitter glue, and with your Mod Podge, make sure to wipe the top off with the baby wipe or a piece of tissue paper. That way the lid won't stick next time you want to use it. Now you just let your Mod Podge dry, and this does take a little bit of a while, or you can come back the next day and work on it to add your embellishments. Now, as you can see, here they are done, and you can see the sparkle all over it. Camera doesn't really pick it up, but it is really pretty. I did add some white around it to make it look like snow. I colored in the wreath, and I added some glitter glue. Now you can use some ribbons. You can use whatever you have in your stash. I love adding these ribbons. It really does make it look good. You can use this. I've got sparkle confetti, all little bits and pieces. I've got some stickers, rhinestones I always have in my collection. I need to buy more, so I want to use these up. And any bits and pieces that you have lying about. I'm also going to use some strong glue just in case the stickers don't stick too much. So this is a great way to use up any item in your stash. And I'm just using these little stickers. Downlandcraft.ie has amazing little gems and pearls and jewels, so make sure to check them out. All the links will be in the description below, and they're great not just for card making but for crafting as well. So I'm just adding little stars to my ornament, and it just adds an extra layer. And I did add extra glue later on because this was just for the video, but that's how it looks with the little stars, and I love stars. It just adds a little whimsical touch. Now I used ribbon, and I always say it's good to have ribbon in your stash. It's one of those things you use over and over again, and you just put that through. So easy, so simple. I wasn't sure what color ribbons I was going to use for my green one. I had some green ribbons, I had some black ribbons because I initially had it as black, but I think it looks nice. And the fun part is putting these little ribbons on. It really does bring it all together. I made tiny little bows, and I'm going to stick that on using a really strong glue, and this just brings it up to another level and makes it look so much more personal. And you can add any colors you like. You can make whatever color tree you want, and this is a great way to customize your tree. And if you want your tree to have purple or pinks or whatever traditional greens and reds, this is a great way to make it more your own. Or you can just hang these on the wall, hang them over your fireplace. You can even make these for different types of years. You can make time of year. You can make Valentine's Day ones, you can make Halloween ones, so you can just hang them up around, or even just a decorative one to put up in your room. But the stamps work really, really well with the air dry clay. Now I didn't know what color ribbon to use for this, but I used this red and white one, and I think it looks really cute. It looks almost like a Minnie Mouse bow. The glue did take a while to dry, so I do recommend this project might take a few days, so it's a great thing to make the clay the one day, paint it the next day, decorate it the next day. It is something that you can stretch out, or you can do in one day if you leave the clay ornaments next to a heater or a warm source. They do dry out quite quickly, but for me this craft took me 2 days. One day for the ornament to dry, and then one day to decorate. And here are the completed ornaments, and they're two very different ornaments using the same stamp, but I think they look fun, and it's something that the whole family can get involved with. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.